hopefully underway. And it does say we're recording now, so that's a good thing. And we got 4 minutes after. Michael, if I start off with the preface and introductions, is that all right? And we'll
that would be great.
We'll get going. Well, let's go back to that first slide, just so we can get to the introductions before we get into the agenda. A few items for folks who are on the call. We kind of read through these requests of everyone, just so we make sure that this recording is efficient, the meeting is done efficiently, and we all get to share our comments in a way that's not too disruptive. So I'll ask that everybody please mute your microphones if you're not speaking. And just for connectivity reasons, we find that not sharing video is probably a good thing to do, just so we don't, lose anybody has their ability to view the material disrupted by just too much video and everything going on at the same time. So we'll ask you to turn off your cameras as well. Please avoid sharing your screens. That's kind of important. We do have a slide deck here that was put together, and that's what we'll use to kind of focus everyone's attention on. If you want to speak at the end of the meeting with comments and questions after we go through the agenda material, please raise your hand and wait to be recognized by either myself or another project team member during the comment period. And lastly, when you do speak, please state your name when you speak. We're taking notes, and we'd like to share those notes with you all and make sure that we're documenting the right comments and associating those comments with the right person and agency and city. All that said, welcome everyone. Good morning. My name is Mike Burns, and I'm a principal planner with the Regional Planning Division of the Houston-Galveston Area Council. This is the first step of perhaps up to 10 steering committee meetings for this Southeast Harris project. Just so you know, subregional studies are an important tool and process for understanding the nuances of this huge region. Recommendations from this effort will help inform HGAC decision makers of this particular area's transportation needs and deficiencies, and guide the distribution of transportation funding in a manner that not only aligns with the needs of this subregion, but also with the regional goals and accepted best practices. The development and approval of the scope and schedule and the funding of this effort by the Texas Department of Transportation and the Houston-Galveston region goes back, as some of you on this call may know, well over a year. And with the solicitation of professional services in the summer of 2019, and ultimately an execution of an agreement just a couple of months ago. As you've read in the emails, talking to the steering committee members, as you've read through the emails that I've sent to you, your involvement is a critical source of input for this effort. Your involvement in this first phase in the whole project, but in this first phase, will help refine the goals, the vision, our outreach methods, identifying areas of need, and helping us to identify potential stakeholders that we should be reaching out to. And I'll ask for the next slide, please. The program for today will involve introducing the project team, your fellow steering committee members, quickly review the schedule and scope of the study, introduce the guiding vision and measurable goals, how we all will engage the rest of the public, and then look at the area's transportation assets. After reviewing all this material, and we would ask that you please hold your questions and comments till the end, we will use the balance of our time. We've scheduled about 2 hours for this, but we'll schedule the balance of our time after the presentations to listen to you and collect your comments. We also need to schedule our next meeting, so that it's something we need to do before we end the call. And then we will ask you to take all this material back with you, review the content with your teams, and then share your comments with us before our next meeting. Next, please. And I'm going to make sure that I download the attendance list here, and I think that's working. So who do we have here today? I'm going to start by reading through this list of steering committee members. Please let me know if you're present. Unmute yourself and then turn the mute back on. And so we'll document attendance and share that with you. So let me get started. Bruce Mann, are you on the call? Hearing none.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
There he is. It's very yeah. The volume's not great, but it's good to know that you're here. Brian Brown with Harris County. Are you on the call?
This is Lloyd Smith. Brian will miss this one. I'm here as the alternate representing Harris County Engineering.
Thank you, Lloyd. We do have a couple of people we have serving as alternates. You can see Lloyd's name down there at the bottom. Chad Burke from the Economic Alliance of Houston Port Region.
Here.
Thank you, sir. And from City of Houston Public Works, Donald Boaku. Help me out with that with your last name. If I don't want to butcher anybody's name, so help me with that. Is Donald? Are you on the call?
You got it. It's Donald Boaku. Yes, I'm here. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, sir. From TxDOT, Jeffrey English is going to be in and out. I think there's a simultaneous 225 meeting going on right now. So I think Jeffrey.
I am here. Yeah, I am here now. And King will be the alternate. King Lee.
Hi, this is Queenie. I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Catherine Parker with the Rail District.
I'm here.
Catherine, thank you so much. And Ken Fickus, I think I saw you on here from Harris County Transit.
Hey, good morning, Mike. I'm here.
Thank you, sir. Milton Rahman from Precinct 2. I believe you're on the call as well.
Present.
And from the LaPorte Police Department, Benny Bowles.
I'm here.
Thank you, sir. And from LaPorte, Teresa Vasquez Evans.
Present. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. City of South Houston, is Arthur Oliveira on the call? Hearing none. And I do have to follow up with him. I want to make sure I have his contact information correct. From Deer Park, I believe Adam Ballesteros, you're on the call?
Yes, sir. I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. From Pasadena, Sarah Benavides. Hearing none. We do have Lloyd Smith serving for Harris County, and Melissa Beeler from City of Houston Planning. You're also on the call, correct?
Present.
Thank you. And I believe that's everything. And next slide, please. Now that we know who's all on the steering committee, and just to go over the HGAC team that will be working on this effort. Again, I'm Mike Burns. I'm the project manager for HGAC. Also on our regional planning team is Ali Isabel. She's the manager of the regional planning division. And we also are going to have Justin Kazilla helping us out with the regional planning from our regional planning team. The communications team, who will assist with our public outreach, will be led by Francis Rodriguez, and you're going to hear more about the outreach efforts later on in this program. And the coordination of our GIS and traffic modeling is being led by Eric Boulay. Next slide, please. For our consulting team, and just so I wrap up my speaking obligations, I'll hand it over to Michael Feeney, who is the project manager for Kinley Horn and Associates. Some of you may be familiar with Michael and Kinley Horn. They've done some work in this area. He'll go over his team, and then we'll lead you through the rest of the agenda and help address your questions at the end of the presentation. Michael, I'll hand it off to you.
Thanks, Mike. So the team is made up of us as the prime consultant, who's obviously doing more than project management. We've got several consultants, all of whom we've worked with before, but for economic analysis later in here, some of the proposed improvements, we've got Hawes Hill and Associates. For mobility and safety analysis, a lot of traffic engineering. We've got Gradient, who's leading a lot of the traffic engineering, and HDR to look at some safety and cross-section issues for us. And we're using CJ Hench and Associates to supplement the existing data by actually going out and collecting field data. We've worked with a lot of these people before, and it's great. So from Kimley Horn, you've got me on the phone. I'm a project manager. I know a lot of you. Some of you I don't. So long story short, I've got 30 years of doing this type of transportation planning work, 20 of it in Houston. I've done a number of successful studies for HGAC over the years. The last sub-regional plan I finished was 2 years ago, the State Highway 146 sub-regional plan. It was really quite well received, and a lot of that was due to a very active and engaged steering committee. So as Mike mentioned, please participate. Don't be shy with questions or comments throughout the process, and we will address your questions and incorporate your good ideas. Kevin Hoppers is not on the call. He's going to QA/QC all our work. Peyton Aarons is on the call. You'll hear from him a lot. He's going to be my right hand on this. Josie Ortiz is another planner and with the firm, and we're happy to have her on the team. And Andy Vickers will be doing some analytical work. Kristen, are you on the call from Gradient?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, she's on the call. I don't know if you made it to this call or not. A lot of his work is coming later, but HDR is another good firm we have on board, and we team with them quite regularly. Hawes Hill and CJ Hench. So that's the core consultant team. I put the three of us from Kimley Horn as red, as we will become Mr. Burns's best friend here. So just to give you a project overview of the study area, it's quite a large study area running from the bayou down to south of Pasadena, Deer Park, the port, all the way over to 45, and then it includes 225. We will be coordinating with TxDOT quite a bit as we get into this study. They're doing a PEL study on 225, so we're going to let them make recommendations on 225 itself, and we'll marry up our recommendations with theirs, and we'll have a number of meetings with them as we go throughout the study. It's an 18-month schedule tentatively. If we can finish it a couple months early, we will. COVID's probably going to make a little bit of the first few months a little slower, but roughly subdivided in those 5 tasks you see there. A lot of opportunity for y'all to participate. We've allowed for up to 10 steering committee meetings. It ends up being 9, that's fine. We have a couple stakeholder meetings. We'll talk to you about the stakeholder groups later and ask for your input on that makeup. And then we have several public meetings in addition to other public outreach activities scheduled for the process. Hopefully, maybe February will be semi-remote. Hopefully the last 2 we could do in person. So want to go into here. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to go through a quick exercise on setting some vision and goals with your input on that. We want to get a lot of public input through the study on needs and deficiencies in the study areas. And we're going to get a good handle on the data we have, what the issues are prior to going in and doing the real technical analysis. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We think we know what a lot of the issues are, but each of you on this call has some expertise we'd love to take advantage of and incorporate into the study. So with that, this is the vision. And we'll ask for your comments on it later, but it's just a draft. Recommended improvements to address multimodal transportation, development, and economic policy needs in the subregion that align with HGAC's overarching goals of mobility, safety, and economic competitiveness. And just the graphic at the bottom, the entire Houston region is growing. We're going to need to fix things that aren't working and also allow for future growth, and also take into consideration freight movement, which in this study area definitely has quite a bit of it, and then allow for some multimodal opportunities so not everyone's driving a single occupant vehicle. The goals for the draft, these are some draft goals we're really going to want you to comment on, and we'll talk about later when you have an opportunity to do it. But we want to breaking them down kind of into these groups here. So on this page, first 2 pages of goals, we've got mobility, looking at multimodal travel options. How can we increase access to the transit that's in the area? Is more transit needed? How can we take the existing system and increase the efficiency of it and the reliability of travel times? Safety, we're going to take a very deep dive into high crash locations, whether it's intersections or corridor segments, and just see what's causing that and how we can mitigate that. Another thing, reducing conflict points for all modes. And we're going to have to develop some performance measures, some metrics as to how we can do it. Looking on the economic side of things, we know there's a lot of freight movement and truck traffic in this area, and we want to facilitate that movement with keeping in mind the residential areas in that study area. So that's a balance, because a lot of those people work in moving freight. So, just like we want to do for overall modes, we want to increase the reliability for truck travel time, so that they're not just picking 2 o'clock in the morning maybe to come through the area. Maintenance, we want everything to be in a state of good repair. And then natural cultural resources, we don't want to develop solutions that degrade any environmental concerns over there, be it air quality or stormwater runoff. So looking at this peacock type of graphic, as Mike calls it, these are from the regional transportation plan. These are kind of the goals for the agency. So they're broken up into safety on the left, state of good repair, moving things, goods and people efficiency, keeping the region being economically competitive, and we want to conserve and protect natural resources to the extent possible. So this is the overall framework. And then at the outer end of the ring, we're going to have to develop some metrics, as I said, some performance measures, so we can see how we're doing on any one of these sectors, whether it's moving people and goods efficiently or safety. So we will do that. So getting on to the public involvement plan, we're going to develop the vision and goals, and we want to identify a group of stakeholders. And what I mean by stakeholders these are important people or groups within the study area. We just can't have everyone on the steering committee. It would get too unwieldy. And in the past, what we've done successfully is kind of have small group meetings with them, so we can group them roughly into civic organizations. So this could be groups, this could be faith groups, this could be things of that nature, more about the people in the neighborhoods within the study area. You have a lot of industry in the area, so we kind of like to group some of your major employers, from petrochemical type facilities out there, trucking groups out there, major employers, and have that. Their set of goals is a little different than the civic one. We want to coordinate with all the schools, because that's a big safety issue, economic competitive issue. And we want to coordinate with the EMS, the police, for public safety type issues out there. We're going to identify the needs of the study area, and mobility is obviously the top one, but safety's married to that. And we want to develop solutions that keep and improve the economic opportunities within the study area. And we're going to identify evaluation criteria for all of that. And we'll develop some of our improvement options. Will be not tailored, but we'll marry up with one of those things on the peacock kind of chart that I talked about. And we'll develop a set of draft recommendations. We'll work with you to get critiques on them, and go through an iterative process to come at some recommendations that will be amenable to all. So with the stakeholders, what we're going to ask you to do is start thinking about the types of groups that you want to have as in this stakeholder group. We'll go out and have a couple of, third of the way through the study, start talking to them, 2/3 of the way, and identify their issues and needs and deficiencies they see in the system out here. And then when we have a draft of the types of improvements, we'll go back to them and say, hey, what do you think? Did we hit the mark? Do you want more or less? Is this a problem for you? So if you can start thinking about that, we'll give you a little homework assignment at the end of all this to come in there and help us frame that group out. An outreach opportunity. So I've worked with Frances before. She's great. And we're going to do a number of things for this. We're going to have a project website for this that's going to have we're going to have a couple online surveys and mapping tools. We're going to have multilingual public meetings throughout the study area. And we're looking at putting a kiosk or a table at some of the community events that come out there. So if you think of any community events, I know Pasadena has the Strawberry Festival, but there's a few things, little pop-up meetings where people are gathering, make sure they're aware of the study, give them a card, handout card. They can provide comments, they can follow on the website. And the online tools have proven highly successful. I did some work for Pearland Economic Development Corporation last year, and this is some of the survey stuff. So we had a online survey, and you could see people rank their top issues here. You know, traffic and safety was the top, but I mean, after Harvey, everyone thinks drainage is an issue. Connectivity, you know, multimodal wasn't a big issue for Pearland, as you can see here, but you can really get a lot of information from people on these study areas. And then you get information about the study. So at this point in this survey, you can see we had 2,600 data points from people, 450 individual comments, 250 people participated. You could track it by the day. So it's a neat tool. You can see how your survey is doing. We asked people what is your vision for 518 Broadway through Pearland? And this is what they wanted it to be. So you see a lot about it flowing better was the main thing in there, and perhaps some aesthetics. I won't show you the graphic, however, of what they thought of it now, because that has some negative words, but that was valuable information to get to. And then this tool here was part of the survey. People could actually pick from traffic, streetscape, business concerns, drainage, and drop little pins on this map and put in comments. And then we got quite a few data points there. So that bottom shows you where people had comments on one of the four major areas. And as you can see, as you'd expect, there's probably a lot of congestion in the dark blue over here towards the left by where 518 meets 288. So a lot of cool tools out there. HGAC is going to develop, we'll work with them to develop the specific survey they'll host. So it's pretty neat. And we will get out there and get a lot of information. Francis, if you're on, did you want to say anything else about the outreach, the public involvement plan?
Yeah, there's just a couple of things that I want you guys to think about if you could help me with. As Mike had mentioned, obviously any stakeholders that we can include in our public involvement, this would be anybody that we could leverage off of to share our public meeting information or to share our project website information with. I know that there's a Baker Ripley in the Pasadena area, so anything like that, any kind of organizations, civic groups, nonprofits that you can think of within the study area. Also, if you guys know of any small local media outlets, that would be helpful as well. We could reach out to them and target them specifically. They can assist us in getting the word out to the community. And I know that Mike mentioned that we were going to do pop-ups and set up tables, but we also have a poster sign that we can leave in a high foot traffic area. So if you guys know of any place where we could leave that at, I would love to leave it at a grocery store. I'm kind of worried about someone walking off with it. So any place like a library, I don't know, a library might be ideal, or community center might be ideal. The poster sign can have a poster with a project website or project information with a QR code that takes you to the project website. It could be a good supplement to us not physically being in the community due to COVID-19. So just a couple of things to think about. If you guys have any suggestions, please feel free to shoot them my way. Thank you.
All right, Francis. Mike, any other comments on the outreach stuff?
No, and I think we just want to, again, as Francis said, recognize that there's COVID and social distancing issues. So this public involvement plan is probably going to be refined as we move along, but very heavy, as a lot of the outreach is recently. It's all online based, and we'll try to do as much in person as possible. So that's just something to be aware of.
Yep, and we left a little flex in our scope so we can tweak things in here. So if you have a better idea than one of us, we'd love to go explore it. So I'm going to have Peyton talk a little bit in a minute, our deputy project manager, about the existing conditions in terms of identifying area of needs. And I know this is a lot of words on this slide, so I'd like to take a couple minutes Some of you have an overarching interest in the study area. Some of you may have a more specific focus, but I think we're really talking about a lot of it here. Active transportation is a regional focus now. So we want to look at bicycle and pedestrian focus areas, things that are out there now and working well, things that are planned but not funded, things that are programmed. We want to make it easier for people to get around outside of a car. So whether that's on active transportation or transit out there. I know not all of the study areas in the metro service area, but there is some metro service out there, and Harris County Transit has a couple of routes through the study area. So we want to find out where people are trying to get to the transit facilities. Do we need additional ones? Do we just need to improve sidewalks to them and have better shelters? So any and all information is welcome. As far as parking, we know there's a lot of freight and truck traffic through here. Do we need some truck parking areas, some kind of short and long-term lots for trucks, or just for the community for big events, maybe near the Pasadena Convention Center? All that seems to hold parking itself. We're going to talk about land use out here. For those of you more on that side of planning, where there's the HGAC Pasadena Livable Center study going on right now. There's some in the study area or near it that have been completed. We're going to talk to those folks and see what ideas they come up with. A, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel, but B, to take advantage of what they heard from their communities and their officials in terms of what's desired out here. And obviously out in this area, there's a lot of freight. There's distribution centers. There's long and short haul shipping. So we want to talk to the port. We want to talk to the industry and the trucking industry as well. Kind of tied in the livable centers, we want to look at the kind of development patterns out here, density, urban nodes, neighborhoods, linkages between residents and little downtown areas. We want to take a look at that. And then we'll talk some about this initial screening. We'll show you some maps in a minute, but we're going to screen the network. We're not going to analyze every single roadway out there. We are going to ask your help in picking some of the key corridors and the key intersections for us to look at for efficiency, safety, congestion. And we'll also take a look at cross sections in terms of complete streets and things like that out there. So this is a lot of the stuff we're trying to identify the areas of need now and the community's desire. Peyton, you want to start talking a little about this existing conditions?
Sure. As Mike mentioned, we are in the very early stages of an 18-month study. And at this point, we're still collecting and mapping data. Many of the existing conditions images you'll see are simply screenshots from HGAC's interactive maps. We will present the existing conditions at a future meeting. Today, we're just asking to hear your priorities, along with the vision and goals. And we're also going to ask you to provide any shape files, maps, or data you have that may be relevant. This map we actually created, it's a crash data heat map that it's from TxDOT's CRIS data, and it maps the density of crashes that have occurred. As you can see, most of the hotspots are at interchanges. Intersections have more conflict points, and they often have more crashes. As part of this network screening that we'll get to in the next part of the presentation, we've identified 50 intersections that are high crash locations, and then 25 high crash segments. And part of what we're going to ask you is if there's an intersection you're familiar with that's particularly dangerous, or if there's a segment of road where you think there are opportunities to improve safety that may not have shown up on our initial screening. We want to hear from you. Next slide.
Peyton, do you just want to just go over real quick with the crash data, the time frame that covers?
This is from 2015 to 2019, so 5 years. Because we'll have 2020 data early next year, we could consider using that, but because traffic patterns have been so atypical this year, we may just continue to stay with the 5-year window from 2015 to 2019.
And a lot of you on the steering committee hear from your constituents about certain locations. So we'd love for you to tell us where your major sources of complaints are, where there's just recurring problems.
And a lot of what we'll recommend with the crash, once we get into the analysis and recommending countermeasures, we'll follow the HSIP and FHWA guidelines, such that if there's a intersection in your jurisdiction that we're studying, you will be you'll have the information you need to complete an HSIP application, in 2022.
Next slide, Peyton.
Yes. This is a screenshot from HJC's interactive map. It shows existing and proposed bikeways. As you can see, there's not a lot of existing bike facilities in the area, but there are many that are proposed. And something that we'll ask of you is if you know of other facilities that may not be on this map, either proposed or existing, perhaps this data is old, that would be helpful, because the data that we're getting from HGAC is going to be the starting point for this study.
And I would like to compliment HGAC as a whole. I've done work for HGAC for a long, long time, and they have really gotten in the past 5 years a lot of really neat tools to go get data. They have the shape files in there, so kudos to them, because it doesn't not just making our job easier, but you can really view things in a much better manner, a much more complete manner. So we're gonna, to the extent possible, use existing HGAC data, and if you have shape files or files that aren't in there, just please pass them along to Mike Burns, and we'll give you his contact info at the end of the presentation, and we can update things as we go along. But we want to make sure the solutions we're developing don't preclude any of these programmed facilities, because if you look at all the dash lines that are planned, you're starting to have you can go a lot more places than you think. So,
and to add to that, the multimodal infrastructure is a priority for this study, and to tie it into crash data, pedestrians are only involved in about 2% of crashes, but they account for about 25% of fatalities. So to make roads safer, you have to consider pedestrians and bicyclists in your design. This is a map of the existing transit service. Most of the study area is outside of Metro service area, and there are a few Harris County transit lines that run through our study area, and there are 3 park and ride facilities along 45 between Beltway 8 and 610.
And we'd like to hear what your residents are thinking about and your businesses are thinking about transit. Is there a big desire for more? Are they happy with what they have, or do they just want a couple parking rides? It can run the gamut. So the more people we get off out of a car and onto a bus, the easier all of our jobs generally are.
We know that freight is a big concern in the area. The amount of truck traffic, 225 has a high percentage of trucks, and there's a lot of industrial development on the north side of 225. This just shows the existing freight network. I know also that there are, I think Port Houston has some of their high priority projects in this study area. So we'll be looking at freight in a detailed lens and how that interacts with the needs of residents.
And we will probably have a meeting with people such as the Port, Economic Alliance, Precinct 2 Engineering, just to see where what you're hearing from the freight movers over here and from people where the freight's being moved through. We'd like to accommodate things as much as possible.
There is an ongoing livable center study in Pasadena. It's in the northwest portion of our study area, and there's been other livable center studies that have been completed in the surrounding area. One of which in the Hobby area, which is across 45 from our study area, where there was also a Southeast Houston mobility study that was recently complete. So we'll be looking at the recommendations and the findings of these livable center study and how we can incorporate them into our plans.
Yep, and there's a lot of good information in there and a lot of good community input in those studies. So we want to see what they're saying, if it marries up to what we're finding out.
This is the land use map, again, taken from HGAC's interactive mapping tool. Like I mentioned before, lots of industrial development on the north side of 225. And there's vacant land or park space scattered throughout the study area, but most of what we see is residential.
Yep, and we're going to take a look at this, and when we get later in the study, we'll talk about desired densities, things like that, what the community would like and what you would like.
So again, with looking at just population density, and the next slide is going to be vulnerable populations, what this means for mobility. Do we need do we need wider roads or transit service? Do the densities merit that kind of those systems?
Yeah, and some of the vulnerable population, they may use transit at a higher percentage or travel by bike or foot. So we want to be aware of that and see how we can make those modes of travel safer. And Peyton, you're too young, but this reminds me of the old school video games, this slide right here. So just back when I was a kid. So, but yeah, again, we're going to take a look at it all. So on to the network screening. So we're going to go through some maps here and intersections in a minute, but we're going to generally shoot for about 25 high priority corridors and 100 high priority intersections for efficiency. So you've got a high volume to capacity ratio. You've got a lot of congestion at these intersections, and we're going to see what we can do corridor wise in terms of cross section and access, and intersections may be more typical traffic engineering solutions, although we could look at some locations, some alternative intersections, anything from underpasses to roundabouts to you name it, single point urban interchanges. So we're going to take a look at those, and we're going to model those in detail. We're going to, interestingly, Chris and Megan from HGAC, we're going to provide them with a certain type of model called Synchro. Some of you may understand that or be familiar with that. Some non-traffic engineers won't be, but they're going to use a mesoscopic model to see what effects these improvements have on shifting how people get around if certain corridors are improved. So we'll do some what if scenarios and see how those come out. So we're looking forward to that because that'll be fun. On safety, we're going to look at 25 major segments of roadways, 50 intersections. Where are the high crash locations? And then what can we do to mitigate those or eliminate, or those things? So we'll take a deep dive at that. And as Peyton said, some of this information will be useful in going for Highway Safety Improvement Program funding from TxDOT. So you will get some useful information out of this report that you can further use for your agency. And we're going to hear what the community says too. What does HGAC staff think? They've heard a lot of comments on here. What are your corridors and areas of concern? And then what the public and stakeholder groups say. So we kind of have an idea of where we think the problem. I guarantee you the locals and the people responsible for providing infrastructure and services out here will come up with a couple, and that's part of the reason. That's one of the big reasons we have a steering committee and stakeholder groups. So we're gonna ask you to. These are the priority corridors, and this is done by functional classification. You've got interstates, principal arterials, et cetera. This was just a crack at the study area corridors we thought were probably worth studying. We'd like to get your comments on these. So we'll give, in a sense, a list of homework at the end of this, but just go and print these study area maps out. And if you need something, contact Mike. We can get it to you in any format you want. You can annotate directly on the map. You can go home over your dining room table with a Sharpie and give us comments. We'd like to get your opinions on which intersections should we study, which road corridors, which segments of the corridor and you can note on there from a congestion point of view, from a safety crash point of view, from a economic redevelopment point of view, we'd like to hear from you where you think the priority corridors are we should be spending a bulk of our efforts on. And so this just lists out a lot of the intersections we've seen with high volume to capacity ratios. A lot of these probably won't surprise you. We're going to work with TxDOT on the 225 and 45 intersections too. Those are obvious. Most diamond interchanges have high congestion, but don't focus as much on 225 because the TxDOT study is dealing with that. But you got plenty of other intersections within the study area, and there's 100 we identified. So from a mobility and safety point of view, we'd like to hear your input on where the problems are. And these were the top 50 crash locations, Peyton?
Correct. Well, these are the top 50 segments. So
yeah, segments.
We broke the study area up into segments of about a quarter mile to a half mile, and then identified which of those segments had the most crashes. So we haven't looked at high injury. There's many ways you could analyze the crash data. Right now, this is just raw number of crashes.
So we're going to delve into looking at the crash rate, crashes per million vehicle miles traveled, start breaking it down a little by what's property damage only, what's a serious, what's an injury crash, what's a fatality crash, and take a look. And we'll do that across all modes too. But your comments on where you think the safety problems are would be very helpful. Segments and intersections. Same thing. So this is the similar thing he did for the intersection safety. We did for the intersection safety. So this showed some with a fair amount of crashes. So we'd like to hear your input on them. We got through this kind of quick. So Mike, how do we want to go through getting comments from them? Just their comments on discussing this. Do we want to go back through the main topics of the presentation and see what comments are had?
Yeah, I've been taking notes. I think a lot of folks have been just popping their questions or suggestions and value into the chat box here. An interesting one from Bruce Mann, who's mentioned resiliency and flood control in the area. That's a good note that we can take and try to incorporate into the goals and performance measures and part of the project evaluation to make sure that it aligns with all the resiliency goals and best practices. I think what we had envisioned was, again, just raise your hands for comments. There you see the contact information for the project. That's a short URL for the project website. That's going to grow as we go along in this effort. And again, we had 18 months to get from this kind of kickoff and introduction to the actual final report with all the recommendations provided to HGAC. So that's going to grow a lot. So the URL was there. There we go. And then again, there's email information. It's all in a PDF file that I attached to the meeting invite. So you can kind of use that to kind of print out the material and the study maps and the contact information. You can also just reply to the invite to send an email to me with additional comments. But if for this balance of time, I mean, we got another hour and 15 minutes left in the program here. If there was anything that you had actually wanted to go over specifically, raise your hand, we can talk about it. Otherwise, we could just go right from the beginning down to and cycle right through the slides again, Michael, and kind of go over the vision and goals and see if there's comments on that and just go one at a time.
Sorry for moving around here, so let me get my thing back here. So what we'd like your comments on, and we can do it now since we have time, but we'd like your comments on the vision statement and the goals. Something from the vision statement or it's the wrong focus, please send us that. On the goals, if you would like to add a goal like the comment on resiliency and flood control, maybe a metric we use, we definitely don't want to make anything worse in terms of runoff, or if we do, we're going to have to note that we're going to have some detention for that. So on the goals, it would really be the goal itself and then metrics for the goal and your ideas on that. On the network screening part, really, I think it's just marking up the maps. And you could send us a list, an email, a spreadsheet. You could take the map and print it out and mark it up. We want to know where you think the problem roadways are, roadway segments, intersections. And that's kind of our, and then the third thing for homework is your list of stakeholders. In the past, we had EMS departments, police departments, school, ISDs. We had a couple principals on the 146 study, the school district transportation coordinator. We had homeowners association. We had various churches. We met on that study area with some of the major petrochem companies over there. That study, for example, had Enterprise Products, ExxonMobil, Chevron. So we met with them. We actually had some trucking representatives there too. So we'd kind of like, for the stakeholders, pardon me flipping around, but for the stakeholders, when you're thinking about that, if I could get to it, is really thinking of it in terms of the second bullet under steering committee meetings. Kind of want to group them into civic groups and industry groups, educational facilities. We got Sanjak out here, and public safety kind of group. So if you have thoughts on people or representatives from groups out there, that would be fantastic for us to be able to contact them and then set up some small group meetings to hear where they think the needs and deficiencies are. And then also to come back later when we've got a rough set of improvements or improvement types and get their opinion on what we're suggesting.
Michael, we have Bruce Mann with his hand up, and then maybe we go back a couple of slides and we'll start with vision and just go one at a time there. But Bruce Mann has his hand up, so maybe Bruce, do you have a question, comment?
Yeah, I was going to say on the vision, this is kind of self-centered, but it's probably true. This is the port region, and nowhere in here do we say the word freight. It's certainly a goal of this is to ensure freight connectivity and mobility. But, the graphic doesn't show freight. We don't call it out anywhere. I think it's.
You're correct. You're correct, Bruce. And we can think about that I guess in the perfect sense of the word, multimodal includes freight. But I think I'll work on something on that because it is such a big component and an economic driver over here. We need to call it out. So that would be both truck and rail for you, right?
Yes.
I can't help you on the shipping side, but that would be a different study with a different group of people. So,
no
problem. But yeah, so something about freight, and you're right. We talked later in the slide about it in terms of freight routes, but not in the vision. So we can work on something like that. That's a good comment.
And I don't see, it looks like, and I'm sure you guys are doing it, but maybe just writing it down somewhere. There's some coordination with the I-45 PEL because that's the western boundary. Certainly this is partnering with the 225 PEL, but there's obviously going to be some connectivity and some impacts to connectivity with the I-45 PEL.
Noted. We'll make sure we're addressing that. Does anyone else have any thoughts on the vision statement?
Lloyd Smith has his hand up. Lloyd?
Hey, Lloyd.
Just be sure to unmute yourself when.
Pardon me. Mike, one observation I have is that's unique about this particular boundary and this particular group of constituents within the area. Often these kinds of studies have TxDOT plus one local jurisdiction, and there's some unique opportunities, I think, with the fact that we have at least 5 different cities, the county with a significant presence in road operations and major thoroughfare maintenance and operations. So a general comment in the way of thinking of the opportunities here on the traffic operations is that in addition to the kinds of things that often come out of this in the way of capital or project-based recommendations, I think there's some opportunities potentially along the way to build some working groups or some discussion on traffic operations or incident management in a way that we really haven't had a forum to do across this group of agencies. So I don't have that thought fully developed, but between the county and these jurisdictions and some participation with TxDOT and Hector as well involving the Beltway, we may have some opportunities, not necessarily for direct input into all the recommendations, but to use some stakeholder groups related to traffic operations as inputs to it, and that might lead to some coordination activities that we could all benefit from.
You know, that could be its own little stakeholder group. I mean, I listed 4, but we could call it agency as a stakeholder, you know, the people from the agencies that aren't on the steering committee. So get the who are generally responsible for, say, incident management and get their thoughts on things. That's not a bad idea, Lloyd.
Just one quick comment. I think when we first talked about this, I believe the study area included the area all the way down to Bayport Container Terminal. And it looks like, which would be basically Red Bluff Road. And it looks like it's not in this study area. There's a lot of growth that's happening, kind of Red Bluff, Bay Area Boulevard, container terminal still being built out. There's a lot of freight movement that's going to happen in that kind of southeast corridor that's outside of this study area.
Okay, well, we can definitely talk to you about the Bayport traffic, and there's some other groups we deal with down there as well, and talk about where it's coming into the study area. I'm not sure how to address expanding the study area at this stage of the game, Mike.
Right. No, and I think you know, we've been working with Harris County, Lloyd, and some of his folks on density of warehousing, and one of the most dense areas of new warehouse growth is right down here on Bay Area Boulevard, Red Bluff, kind of in that area.
I did some work down there for Precinct 2. Gosh, it must have been at least 12 years ago. And there was some with the truckers down there and their warehousing up. Well, I made a note to talk to you about that, Bruce and Lloyd. So we will be reaching out about that in the near future, just to see where the trips are generated and hear what their concerns are. Because they're probably, if they're not going up 146, you know, they're probably coming through the study area. Any other comments on the vision here while we're over here as I scroll through this? Taking a quick look at the goals, is there something, Lloyd, you mentioned incident management that could come under safety, and operations that would obviously come under the operational efficiency. Is there anyone else have any comments on the mobility or safety goals that would be something we could look at? So the first one's kind of dealing with multimodal. So on foot, on bike, on a bus. The second one is really overall, it's congestion related. And it's not just reducing congestion, but it's the reliability of travel times, which I think also includes freight. Safety, crowd clash locations, and corridors. Economic development, facilitating the truck flow while providing mobility. We're going to have Hawes Hill, who does more of this economic type stuff, come in here later in the study, maybe about a third of the way through once we start looking at specific improvements. And they can give us some comments on the economic benefits of different types of improvements. Maintenance is something we'll have to talk to the agencies about that Lloyd mentioned. And then we're going to do an high-level environmental look at this to make sure nothing we're recommending is reducing the quality of the environment out there, increasing runoff, reducing park space, anything like that. Is there anyone who thinks we're missing something?
So this is Milton Ramon from Harris County Precinct 2. I think it's more related to port, but one of the things we've been looking at or considering to see if we need to look at alternative modes of freight transport, or innovative mode of freight transport rather than just using the 18-wheeler as part of the study.
Okay, so are you talking rail for that, or
any alternative modes?
Okay.
Milton, if you meant freight shuttle.
Who is leading that look for you down in the county, Milton? Or are you leading it?
So I think it will be Lloyd, and our county engineering department will be our main point of contact.
Okay. All right. Well, I made a note to follow up with you on that because that's an interesting topic. So we will be reaching back out about that, and then talking to Lloyd and whoever he's got working on that to hear what ideas they're coming up with, and we could see how we could improve those or incorporate those into this area.
Yeah, I see Bruce raised his hand. I'm pretty sure he's going to have something to add on this.
Thanks. Yeah, no, it's just adding on to that. I think someone mentioned it, the port area mobility study specifically mentioned freight shuttle, and it's in this region. So it certainly should be something that we take a look at.
Yeah, and that was done by HDR, right?
Yes.
Because that's part of the reason I have them on the team. When we get into that, I'm going to say, hey, you guys did this. Tell me all about it. So, but it's a great point, and it's noted now, and we will look into that. So thank you all for that comment.
Michael, Donald from Houston DPW has a comment.
Okay.
Yes. So Michael, this is Donald, Houston Public Works. I think we have mentioned it in passing, but again, I think it'll be good to re-emphasize putting drainage as a goal, drainage runoff, making sure that these new roadways, new intersections are helping to move water. I don't know how we'll craft that, but I think it's a necessary goal I think if we bring it up and highlight it, we can make sure that we are working towards it. So if there's a way we add it, that would be good.
I think if Mike wants to give you another $1 million, I'll do a drainage study for the whole area. Now, I think one way we can capture that is looking at opportunities if we're talking about changing a cross section, for example, looking at opportunities to increase ditch sizes or incorporate some flood control or some runoff capacity there. So I will have we have a really good regional drainage guy up in our Woodlands office. So I'm going to have him take a look at this when it's appropriate and say, hey, what do you think about the drainage here? Because on that study, I referenced the public outreach from Pearland. We did a lot of that on that corridor. So we've got he had some great ideas on how to, how to move water or store water and not take up a ton of right of way to do it. So as we're making any recommendations on corridors, Donald, I think we can do that.
Yes, I agree. I think it's important. And also, with the city, that's the direction we are doing. We are currently doing a study for sidewalks, resilient sidewalks. So as we are talking about the region, I think it will be good to see how we can move into that kind of thinking as well. And this is a great opportunity for that. So yes, I think documenting it somewhere, making sure that it comes up in the goals will be important.
Okay, and that could even be something like like under conserve and protect on the natural cultural resources, we could put in there opportunities for resiliency, opportunities for increased capacity for water. So we will start to brainstorm on that, but that's a good comment.
Yes, and it becomes a safety issue as well. It somewhat ties to the safety as well, because eventually, if we can move water, it leads to the safety of the residents. So I think we can somehow find a way to incorporate it into it.
Yeah, that's not an issue. And we'll talk about it. I mean, maybe resiliency is a metric under number 8, and then or heck, number 7. But I hear your point, and I'll probably reach out to you on that. I'm curious about resilient sidewalks. So I'll tell you, I live in the Heights, so the non-resilient sidewalks have the live oats next to them, and the roots come up and just break all the sidewalk up. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah, going forward, we are looking for ways to see how all that can come together. So
nope, it's interesting. Good, and this is the fun part of the study, having people from so many agencies to give their good ideas and what what those agencies are working on.
Mm-hmm.
Any other comments on the goals?
Michael Lloyd Smith raised his hand, but he also included a comment that the county can provide some GIS layers for some of the maintained channels. The Harris County Flood Control District is probably a good stakeholder. All the engineers that are on this call and in the different cities in this area, they kind of know where those problem areas are. One with drain, one with accessibility issues, with some upheaval in some sidewalk areas that are trip hazards and things like that. That's quite frankly, that's why you're on part of the steering committee, is to help us identify those and share the information. If you have GIS information that you want to share with us, let's do that. And then once we get our commenting tool kind of up and running, that'll be another opportunity to kind of drop pins where there's problem areas. But
right,
Lloyd,
that's where I was headed. This is Lloyd. We didn't have a specific action item related to agencies providing particularly their transportation improvement plans or capital plans, depending on the city or the jurisdiction. They always take a different form. Do you have a specific time or a method that we might share what forward-looking information we have in terms of transportation related?
I will work with Mike Burns, and we will craft an email to send out to everyone, Lloyd, and then we have a site where would they be able just to upload this to our site? If they send it to Mike, he'll be able to upload it to our share file. So yeah, that's a great point, Lloyd. We'll send out and ask for all your data that you think's relevant, your CIPs, your transportation programs, and we'll send that out in the email.
We could also make the share file available for public upload, so anyone with a link could upload it directly there. So Mike doesn't have to be the pass-through, but
we'll
get it.
Anyways, do it.
When we do that, either way, you'll get an email from Mike. Everyone on the call asking you to help you provide it, so we can upload it. You can upload it directly. Cut out the middleman.
And I believe Milton has his hand up as well. Milton.
Yes, Michael. One more point I wanted to add, that the study should also include the future modes of transportations, the autonomous vehicles, electronic vehicle, and whatnot, and how this network supports that.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say, Michael, that on our mobility, it's going to be transit input. If there's increased transit services, shared use paths that need to be added to the area to accommodate those bikes and scooters and anything else that walking. That's better accommodate that as an alternative mode.
Yep, that definitely fits in under number 1.
Yeah. And if there's no other comments, Michael, maybe we move on to the.
It looks like there's a couple of comments in the chat.
Sure.
A couple from Melissa Beeler and Anita Holman regarding Vision Zero and how that's being incorporated, and also in terms of climate change and VMT reduction.
Well, the VMT reduction type stuff is going to be an output for some of the improvements. Those are the kind of things that we will do, but incorporating Vision Zero is a good comment.
Anita had a comment on the safety in the Vision Zero. Anita, if you're on the call, do you want to just talk about that? And mostly with the slant, I'm assuming this is for the livable center, but the entire study area. Is that something you want to elaborate on?
Sure. I just like to see the incorporation of complete street verbiage. So when we're trying to think about especially when we start thinking about safety and improving things like roadway cross sections and or intersections, that we're taking into consideration the overall design speed that we're wanting to gear towards. So where we naturally start to incorporate those multimodal elements where they complement each other. I don't want it necessarily just to be when we say improve functionality of the corridor, what we're really talking about is doing, for example, expansion so that we clear an intersection quicker. So I want us just to kind of think about those complete street elements where sometimes it really is slowing down traffic and not necessarily increasing the speed.
Yeah, that's where we'll balance safety versus mobility, Anita. But your comments well taken on the complete streets and the Vision Zero concepts.
Thank you.
And Bruce Mann mentions complete streets in appropriate areas. What I would say about complete streets, just at the high level, is it's all modes and abilities. It's freight movement as well as pedestrian movements. So that's really the rigor that's going to be used as we move forward in this process, is making sure that everybody's accommodated in the appropriate areas. Obviously, arterials and the highways are more appropriate for freight movement, but those corridors should accommodate other users as well, not just specifically for freight. And then once you get more to the neighborhoods and around the schools, obviously it's much very important to provide accessibility for pedestrian movements and bicyclists, so everyone can bike and walk around those areas that are more conducive to neighborhoods and away from the freight corridors. I mean, that's kind of really the effort of this study. So I appreciate all this talk about complete streets. This is great.
My only concern is I don't want to, I'm not sure we need to create bike lanes and pedestrian pathways on Independence Parkway.
Well, I'm not riding my bike on 225, I'll tell you that. So, but I hear your comment. With the pavement condition, I may need to pull out the mountain bike for that out there, but that's for the PEL study to solve. All right. Well, these are some good comments. This is the kind of information we wanted to get from everyone. So just paging through on the stakeholders, the agency working group, Lloyd mentioned maybe a group we want to have, but your comments on any of the civic, industrial, schools, public safety, if you know the major employers out there, the major trip generators in your area on the traffic side, but on the community side, tell us what the groups are that would be interested in talking about the area and where they see the needs being and the deficiencies being and their hopes for what types of improvements in general, and we'll see what we can do with that. All right, the outreach, we're gonna get into that a little later. Again, I think maybe too here, Mike, is where I add a couple things in that people have mentioned, like Vision Zero or something. I mean, we heard some needs on this today, right? So.
Exactly, and even the public outreach. I think we got a lot of suggestions for people to contact and folks to include in this process.
Yep. Well, this is why we have these calls, because you and I don't know quite everything, so we get some great input here. So, but yeah, this is something with the needs that we're hearing. A couple more we can add in here. You and me and Peyton can work together on getting an email out to get some of this information on crash data, if there's missing ped bike planned or things out here. Ken's comments on transit services, freight information. I'm imagining we'll be having a discussion or 3 with Bruce. We'll definitely piggyback on some of the livable centers ideas. And then if you can go through this quarter, those of you who are so inclined, these maps, and get back to us within, say, 2, your thoughts on the corridors, the corridor segments, the intersections from a pure mobility point of view, that would be great, where you think they are. And then similarly on the safety issue, corridors and intersections where you perceive or there are safety problems. And like I said, you could send an email with a list. You can have a spreadsheet. You can just mark this up, print this out, mark it up with a Sharpie, and send it back over to us. It doesn't matter. We'll take the information in any format we get it, and we'll take a look at it. So we got some comments on the vision and goals that we will put in here. We will have this revised by the next meeting. I mean, if you have any, like this weekend, just within 2 weeks, get us comments on any of this is what our request is. That way it gives us time to work on it internally with HGAC. We'll tweak some of the statement and goals, come up with some metrics, and we can review them at the next meeting and finalize them. We'll get your comments, and we'll discuss on the corridor screening, the network screening for intersections and corridors. Your ideas on the stakeholders, just give us a list of those, and we're going to start chugging along with our existing conditions analysis. Are there any other comments, Mike? Anyone else have their hand up for any topic? The floor is open.
I don't see any. I think it's also important just to say that, this meeting right here isn't the only opportunity to make comments. I think the strategy is between now and our first public meeting, which is, to get comments from, everyone who lives in that area, regardless of whether on a steering committee, stakeholder group, or just live in the area or work in the area, or in the vicinity. What we'd like to do is between now and then use that as the opportunity to kind of continue to collect comments, but obviously as we move along, we need to better refine that and make sure that everything kind of aligns with our goals. And I will also say that we need to schedule a next meeting. We were kind of hopeful we would have one probably in this early point, only because there's not a whole lot of time between now and our first public meeting to possibly meet again in December. If it's all right, I think something that worked well this last time around was sending out a link to a calendar to see where everyone on the steering committee's availability would be. I can do that again and pick the first week of December and just see where most people are available during a window of time. If that's the best way to go about it, if there's suggestions on meeting dates, this is kind of the opportunity to kind of give suggestions about whether this is a good format, this is a good time, first week of December, whether that works or not. But that's something we can follow up with afterwards.
First week of January, you mean, Mike, or December?
I would say December. Try to meet again in 1 month. If there's no availability or no appetite for that, we can push it to January. Again, we'd like to have a lot of steering committee input, or as much as possible, with the vision, the goals, areas of need, so that when we do share the information with the public, it's well informed with comments from the steering committee. So if that's all right, I'll send out another calendar invite for that, and just see if there's appetite or not, and maybe we push it to January because of the holidays and whatnot. Yeah, we do have 10 of these programmed. So we do have some flexibility with moving things around. And again, we have our first public meeting again, as Mike is showing here on our schedule, in the February/March timeframe. So if we do need to tighten things up, it's between now and February and March is kind of the time to kind of do that with this group.
All right, so you're going to send out a meeting preference thing, Mike, and then we'll probably follow up with an email asking you within 2 weeks to get us comments on the stakeholder committee memberships, your comments on the network screening, any comments you think of further on the vision and goals. And I think 2 weeks would be a good goal to have those back. So, Mike, I'll talk to you later about wording that email and getting it out to everyone. Well, these were good comments today, and I appreciate everyone attending. And I'd urge you to continue this throughout. I know everyone has a busy schedule, but that 146 study that was incredibly well received by all parties and the public, I can't take all the credit for that. It was a great steering committee on that one, and they drove the study and they made sure we looked at all the appropriate elements, and that's why it was successful. So I would encourage everyone to keep involved just like you have been today and not be shy about making comments. And we will incorporate all your comments that we got today. Mike?
Yeah, I think this is fantastic. Thank you for walking us through the presentation and helping address all the comments. I want to thank all the steering committee members, and I think Mike said it well that having a very good group of people involved in this type of arena will just do nothing but help create a great study that's well informed, and people feel like they had a lot of buy-in and input and contribution towards. And for the decision makers, HGAC, TxDOT, and the local communities, all those decision makers will feel the comfort level will be high, and if nothing else, the recommendations were just well informed and had a lot of buy-in. So looking forward to the continued participation of everyone. Again, we'll try to pick meeting times that work best for everyone, so we have a very high participation rate. And I'll just close everything by saying we're going to have notes available for our next meeting. The project website, which you see there, is going to grow over time. We'll have an interactive commenting tool that will roll out and provide additional comments. The old-fashioned way of just paper and email, that's fine too. We're trying to be a little bit more advanced with that, and we'll help everyone out with that. So if there is no other comments, Mike, I'll just thank everybody for participating, and
we're giving you 40 minutes back in your day, and I won't promise you I'll do that again. In fact, I guarantee you, the more information we have to discuss, we probably won't give you that, but we'll give you 40 minutes back so you guys can have a leisurely lunch.
There you go.
Thanks. Thank you very much to everyone for participating.
Thank you.
It looks like there is some exit here.
We'll get our notes together, Mike. So we, over here. So if you, and do that, and then you and I, and we can review them and talk about, or I can take the first crack at tweaking some of the vision and goals based on what we heard. And I'm going through this thing now. Let's just see. Oh, are all these comments recorded?
Yeah, they'll live in the program, and I'm just gonna try to stop the recording right here. We have what's the time? 11:21. So I'll stop the recording. I think I downloaded the attendance list. Okay.
I'm jotting these down. Josie would do the same. All these notes, because they were giving us some